Recording is on now. So now you will introduce and am I all? Recording is on now. Now you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, hi, I'm Vinita Sinha, and my co-presenter is Professor Anand Khatri. We are happy to be part of this conference, the 6th International Conference on Linguistics, Literature and Culture at ICLLIC. The paper title that we have proposed is Verisimilitudes of Dialects, Art, Culture and Urban Form, Migrants from Kosi region of Bihar. My co-presenter, Professor Anand Khatri, has his expertise in the field of architecture, but he's deeply interested in literature and culture, and that's how we have joined up. Speaking for myself, I teach English literature at Indraprastha College of Delhi University, and I have worked in this particular region, that is Kosi region of Bihar, studying mostly their oral traditions and, of course, the art forms. So that's how the two of us came together for this invite to be a part of this conference. And thank you for having accepted our presentation.
This paper talks about migration, which may not be an exercise which we can predict. And then it talks about the art and culture that binds human social existences. The paper focuses on adaptations which are slow and happen over generations. And then the time spent by dialect, art, and culture to adapt itself to the new physical and cultural geography. It also talks about the changes in the linguistic, literature, and culture of the migrants, the mental maps which are there in the minds of migrants who keep on doing these rituals and carry on the festivity which is originating from the hinterland, and their image of a city or a region. So it is all written with an aim to help localization of SDG 11.
Just as Professor Khatri right now stressed on the word migration. Now, if you read over here, before you is the map of Bihar and the adjoining state Jharkhand, and within Bihar, the particular region Mithila, which shares its border with Nepal. So migration is a well-known phenomena, and as we know that it can be sometimes, it is a willed exercise, but it is often forced by extenuating circumstances. It necessarily entails the carrying over of dear possessions in the form of art and culture, because if Da Vinci did that, so do people do now. And these things bind human social existences and are compelled to undergo change. In an attempt to imbibe the new surroundings and the altered cultural geography, the migrant settlers build bridges between their origins and the new destination. It is these bridges that bring in the change. And that's exactly what we are going to focus upon. Carry on.
Yeah.
And the region of our concern, as we just said, is the Kosi region, which is a very topographically a very fragile area because it is crossed by several rivers. And these rivers, on the one hand, they make the soil very fertile, but at the same time, they continue to pose the threat of floods, which is practically an annual feature. The government steps in to rehabilitate people, to compensate for the changes, and so on. But nevertheless, over a period of time, people have started to exercise other options or look out for more permanent homes rather than be uprooted by natural calamities. So in 2020, some 9.6 million people in the Kosi River Basin, already reeling from the COVID-19 pandemic, were inundated by monsoon flooding in Nepal, India, and Bangladesh. This number is a phenomenal number. And then comes the whole story of how these people reposition themselves, and how do they cope with this major dislocation in their lives, not only in the physical sense, but also otherwise.
Now, this while researching, we thought of focusing on certain important subjects. One is the speed of generational change. With technology and the speed and flexibility for migration, the generational change has more speed. There are many communities existing in the same world, each different from the other. It is thus a world of more variety and diversity. The context of art and culture, the central theme of the context of people that belongs to the geographic awareness and agricultural cycles, manages its extensions and shares its knowledge with the migrant urban cultures. It reintegrates them to the natives as a symbolic and dialectical continuity. Art, customs, dialects, festivals all aid in connecting the migrants to the native families. The duality of life, or the dual life for the migrant especially, this there is a stark difference in the preferences of life, aspirations, symbols of progress, respect of relationships, values in relationships, connect with the elements of nature worshipped in the festivals, in customs, clothing, family support, presence, social values, art, and even in the selection of canvases and ink for art. This in migrant cultures is different to the extent that we can call life adaptation to continuity as dual. So when a migrant is carrying on these festivals, it is almost like a superficial imposition. Then the next important thing is the mental maps. The practice of customs remap the geographic realities and family stories in the newer generations. The newer generations thus carry a heightened sense of belonging to contextual realities, while the reality is in itself in complete change. Life of migrants thus goes on with hypnotized ancestry. Then the next important thing that we must think of is the new knowledge from dialects. So what happens is that there are so many values in local dialects that people are using while they are conducting these festivals and rituals, that when it comes to the foray of urban migrants, then they have to understand a lot of words which have been left behind, which are no more a part of urban life. And understanding them is like rebuilding knowledge in in the existing knowledge systems, thereby integrating human life on the two banks of cities and communities, which are the basis of SDG 11. This small is also talking about the mastermind theory, a theory which tries to explain that how the context of achievement, the context of desire, the context of success has been changing from a very, very physical human reality to an animated reality. So, like here on the extreme left hand side is a farmer who was actually the hero of all movies, all Bhojpuri films and songs. His achievements were small and his values were full of virtues, whereas the villain was the prosperous man, the fat man with the hair, with a lot of jewelry and pomp and show, and he was the villain for the hero of India in 1960s. From there, it goes on to the change of the hero as an enabled man, a financially enabled man. And the backdrop of all songs and settings became a person with more embellished materialism. And from there, it went on to today, where the hero is more of an animated, mechanical reality. There is a continuous change which is there in the aspirations of people, in the projection of success, and in the values that are built into the human success form.
To take the same argument forward, you have this slide in front of you, which has three words on it: Let me just explain those words. The first one is called Chhat, which is a very, very important and now a popular festival, which has come to acquire a pan-Indian presence. The second one, Sama Chakeva, is something which is very peculiar and special to the region alone. However, in this process of migration, we find that people carry this cultural bit with them and try and do it, which I will soon explain. The third word, kohbar, is something which is there by way of the image on the screen. This is a particular painting which is steeped in tradition and it has meanings therein. Because here is a mural which is painted on the wall of the bedchamber of the newly wedded couple, and a particular direction is chosen for it, which is meant to suggest warmth, conjugality, etc. The symbols that are chosen for this particular painting relate to life, to fertility, to procreation, to goodness, eternity, and so on. For example, we can see the sun. There is also the moon on the other side. Turtle, which is known to have a long life. Elephant, which is again associated with both life and intelligence. And the worship that is being carried out by the newlywed. Now, coming back to it, what we are trying to say is that all of this lives in the memory of the migrant. So while this Kohbar painting would have been, only a cultural exercise in its rural original setup, moving to the city means that it acquires a new flavor, and what was painted on the walls now becomes an exercise on canvas, which is ready for sale. Chhat, the festival that we were talking about, this is something which is meant, this particular festival has the spirit of what you call inclusivity. As you can see, there are people standing in hordes in the flowing water of the Ganga in this case, the holy Ganges, and they pray to the sun god. So here is a festival in which you rule out any intermediary presence of the Pandit or the Brahmin. It is between the deity and the worshipper. For some reason, strangely, I would say that it is practiced more by women because it is something which is concerned with the health and prosperity of the family, and the woman takes on the role of doing this. However, see the marked difference between the picture on the right and the left. The same people, when they have migrated to urban spaces and they can no longer find the flowing water, they find a way of fulfilling this prayer, which is so very essential for the healthy life and prosperity of the family. So they choose to stand in buckets. So the water quotient is there, and the rest, of course, can be managed because once again, in these urban spaces, the migrant community likes to live in clusters because that is their only fallback for, for comfortable living, for secure living. As you can read on the screen, can we go back to it? It says this is a cultural ritual which was always conducted in water. It might be so in future, but we are not too sure about it. It is being conducted over a prayer for water now. Expressed through symbols made in the air, this paper focuses on the speed of time adopted by dialect, art, and culture as it changes from one urban form to another. This one is very interesting. It has several paintings over here. These paintings have been drawn by different artists and you can see the painting on the right, which is a typical village scene where people have gathered in the so-called fair or mela, the Hindi word for it. And there is a woman who plays the role of a trapeze artist. She's walking on the rope and everybody looking up towards her so that she does not, wishing that she should not lose her balance and will she manage to reach the end or not. In quite a close substitute to that painting, I look at the painting on the extreme left, in which once again the onlookers are the same. there are women, there are people who are looking up to the sky, but this time not to the balance of the trapeze artist, instead looking at the aircraft that is carrying the prime minister to the flood affected area. So this is how symbols change, even while this particular form of art is ruled distinctly and very overtly by tradition in terms of color, in terms of the method of painting, the style, the choice of objects. Yet it is there is a simultaneity of existence about it because it is corresponding to the present needs, the present themes, etc. So the Prime Minister, Modi, coming in the aircraft to visit the flood affected area of Kosi is as important perhaps as the woman who's the trapeze artist in a mela.
What is
Uh,
most, I would like to add here that what is most interesting to see here is that it is not about not knowing how to draw, but the patterns used in making the aeroplanes and the helicopters and the flying fish and the aeroplane, the one which is flying on the extreme left and bottom corner, they are all the same patterns which are used for clothes. So they are looking at everything as an envelope, but the capability of the woman on the rope, walking the rope, and the woman or the people flying the planes are different. So capacities are different and successes are different. So,
it's also aspirational in that
yeah,
sense.
right.
Uh, Once again, this cluster of paintings on the screen, this is again a very interesting one. I'd like to begin with the one in the center where you find a woman with her front face, with her profile, and other women in the picture. Interestingly, this is a picture which has some kind of an autobiographical meaning to it from what I got to know when I spoke to the artist. The woman with the front face is the present, the successful woman who recalls her past as a demure bride, as one who begins to wonder whether this should be my life or should I step out. And she finally steps out, and then they build brick by brick, they build the steps towards success. And finally, the one on the top is stretching out a helping hand to the other to reach. So, together in sisterhood, something which is a very known feature. In fact, we always resent that sisterhood is not a concept that belongs to the West. It belongs to any agile and any successful society. So while there is sisterhood, but at the same time, the individual aspiration has been very well done within this art, within this particular painting, but all relying on tradition. The only deviation, I would say, is the border of the painting, where instead of using the typical symbol that is either fish or flower, here she has used bricks which are symbolic of what she's going to build her life upon and towards. If you look at the other paintings, you see that how the progress is being charted, because here is the woman who's at the driving seat and she has passengers behind. I'm looking at the painting on the bottom left, and bottom right, once again, they are riding a bicycle where the man sits in the front, the woman sits behind, but she's no longer veiled, nor is she, in any kind of a mood of hesitation about it. They're all set out. So this is the journey towards the urban space, looking out for better opportunities and gearing up for it, are in fact already braced enough courage for it. Likewise, the symbol, the painting of the train becomes symbolic of that journey, that massive journey from one place to another, which once again does not suggest uprooting. Instead, it suggests a linking up from one station to the destination. The car on which the painting is being done is again a very, very exhilarating exercise for the artist, who has stepped out of her very traditional mode of choosing themes. Instead, she's using it for more for recreation than for anything else. The purpose over here is some bit of self-expression and, of course, donning something which may not have been ascribed to her otherwise in the rural space.
So as we see, the canvas has started changing, the car, the train, any other space. So moving from there into dialectical realities, these are two works of a professor of Hindi who has been writing on two festivals, and we can observe the dialectical concordance with local knowledge. There is so much of detail built into the local processes of customs and festivals that the specific words used for them in dialects are no more known to the urban migrant. I will give you an example. The Mang, Pipa Sindhur, and the Adhartiya. Adhartiya is that soft formation of land which happens between the river and the firm land on which we tread. So in India, in reality, in Delhi, in most of our metropolitan cities, we don't have the Adhartiya area. Similarly, the Mang Pipa Sindoor, or the way of using vermilion on the center parting of the head, which starts from the head of the nose and ends in the middle top of the head, is something which is not known to the urban lady of the house. So similarly, Dev Peter and Patna in Jal, how to sit in water in flowing river is something which is alien to a urban dweller, whereas these things remain in dialect and in day-to-day use, used in all forms of language formations and poetry and cultural manifestations.
It's interesting to see that the female poet over here, while she's writing in Hindi, as we just said, she is very carefully choosing the dialect and preserving it over here for purposes of remembering tradition, for purposes of keeping it alive, not just remembering, but keeping it alive, because she chooses words which are part of the local diet. She talks about, those particular things. Thekua, chuda, mitti, mitha, gholti hai satua. This is all part of the staple diet as well as the festival diet. Similarly, she goes on later to talk about the various areas of the house, the courtyard. The courtyard is something which is now a diminishing concept in urban homes, because we have rooms and at best we have a balcony, but we don't have a courtyard into which everybody can spill into it. Similarly, she's talking about the goddess which is the Kul Devi, that's the word over here, which means the goddess of the family. Now, we are definitely observing festivals and praying to different deities, but this concept of the Devi, the deity that belongs to that particular family, is slowly escaping the mind and memory. Similarly, she brings in several other things which used to be part of the daily kitchen exercise. For example, grinding the mortar and the pestle, which is no longer used because you have a substitute for it by way of an electronic apparatus. And once again, these are ways, I would say, these are very strong and deliberate ways of keeping the origins and the roots alive while we have moved to different spaces, and we do not want to give up our original.
Thank you. So I'm stopping share and